How's it going? It's your pal Mike Squires. This is the Couchers Podcast, episode number 230. And my guest this episode is Chris Ballew, the former lead singer, front person of Presidents of the United States of America. He's made music under a number of different projects, but most recently, like just in the last couple of years, he's finally started to release solo music. And I mean, it's his best work, I think. It's psychedelic and it rocks and it's just fuzzy and pretty and, you know, still is playful, but also has some serious themes. It's really, you should check it out. Seriously. If you're a fan of like fuzzy psychedelic pop music, this is your jam. He's released 3 albums just in the last year and a half to not less than 2 years. I Am Not Me, Soul Unfolded, and then most recently Primitive God this year. And he says in this interview, this conversation, he said that he's got, I think, 4 more records coming. They're ready to roll, but something like 80 songs. My guy is incredibly prolific and is really making beautiful magic music. So we cover a lot of stuff. We talk a little bit about the presidents. We talk about his pre-president's life, his young life, music development. We talk about his relationship with Sandman in Boston. My guy's famous from Morphine, the band Morphine. Chris talks about him being introduced to the 2-string guitar, 2-string bass in this manner through Sandman, and then we talk about his new music and just sort of the inspiration behind all that. So I hope you enjoy this conversation. I had a great time talking with Chris. I have a little bit of history with him. I used to work for the presidents for a short period, so it was super fun. Thank you for listening, watching, however you're taking this podcast in. I want to take this opportunity to thank everyone who supports Couch Riffs on Patreon, patreon.com/couchriffs. It is what makes this possible. You would be surprised how much money it costs to keep everything happening and going and hosted and posted and to keep Don Gunn paid for mixing and managing all the audio files for the cover songs, which we are building a number of cover songs right now. They're slow going. A lot of people are on tour. People are busier than they were during the pandemic. So things are slower going, but I suspect that as always, it's going to have like 6 of them are going to get done at once. That's kind of how it always goes. So I thank you guys so much for your support. It means a lot to me and it makes this happen. And so if you're enjoying this, I appreciate you. Thank you so much. And thank you for your support. I also want to thank my sponsor, Variety Coffee Roasters in Brooklyn, New York. VarietyCoffeeRoasters.com. Variety Coffee just opened up a new cafe. If you are in New York, go check it out. These guys are fucking awesome. I drink it. I'm drinking it right now. I'm drinking some Variety Coffee. Look at that. Every day when I'm home, I'm drinking Variety Coffee. I would recommend following them on social media. Go order some coffee from them. I'm a coffee professional outside of music. That's my job. That's my gig. So if that endorsement means anything to you, there you go. It should be good enough. Let's see. Anything else to add? Shit. I know I'm forgetting something. I would also say, don't forget the golden rule. Treat people the way you want to be treated. You know about this? The golden rule? Talk to people the way you want to be talked to. Treat people the way you want to be treated. And just imagine if everyone in the world was happy. If you were individually happy, you'd keep your nose out of other people's business. You'd be so stoked. The world would be a better place. Don't be a dick. Saying?
You know what I'm saying? You know him, Chomsky.
You know what I'm saying?
You know him, Chomsky.
It's so nice to see your face.
Thank you. I think that every day when I wake up
So
about your
nice.
face, because I
That's
have
so
a
nice.
nice picture of you in the bathroom. Yeah.
Right. Of course you do. Of course you do.
Yeah.
We have a bathroom history.
Oh, do we? We don't need to go there right away. We could build up to that.
I mean, it's worth mentioning.
Boy, I'm just glad I'm alive. Let's put it that way.
You're the only person other than like the occasional girlfriend in the shower kind of thing that whose urine has ever touched me.
You're
So
welcome.
you're counted among the few.
The few, yeah. Well,
Yeah.
and then there's all the ones where they touched you and they didn't survive the
I
ordeal.
mean, no, they just don't exist. It just
They
doesn't
just don't
exist.
exist. They've
It
been
just doesn't.
wiped off the face of the earth. Oh,
How are you doing? Do you live?
I was riding pretty high that night. I think that was early on in the get in a van with the band again after a 5-year break and drive around.
I
What year was that? It was Spokane, right?
2000. No, dude. No.
Boise.
That was Minneapolis.
Oh, right.
It might have
Jeez,
been Andrew's first gig.
that's it. It was Andrew's first gig at that club where the Pixies did their first gig after a million years apart.
And it was
A
also
little
a
while
weird
later.
club, right? It didn't feel like a club. It felt like a grocery store bank that turned into
Yeah.
a club.
Yeah, it did. It did. I don't remember the name of it, but yes. Oh my gosh, I remember Andrew backstage with headphones on right up to showtime, just like trying, like stressing about. I don't know how he did it. That was a Herculean thing, man. Taking on all those new songs and playing a 3-string guitar. I mean, he nailed it. He nailed
He
it. He
did do a
saved
good
our
job.
asses. Yeah,
Dave is big shoes to fill. He's a great guitar player.
amazing guitar player. So
Yeah.
good. So good.
Mm.
So like able to be like clean chicken picking and then just like scattershot whack.
Rip and fuzz.
Yeah, exactly.
Let's slow down.
Okay, yeah.
Let's pump the brakes.
I was just gonna say pump the brakes.
You have so much. There's so much shit that I want to talk to you about, and we can't talk forever because we have lives to live.
Right.
If we talked forever, you wouldn't have anything or any time to talk to anyone else ever again.
Probably be fine. I mean, eventually we would pretty soon, but I think we can go maybe 6 or 7 days without water. But then we'd have to stop and get some. Oh, I got okay.
Stay
All right,
hydrated.
buckle up, people.
I can eat this dog at some point.
True.
Day 25.
I got nothing in here except guitar picks and batteries.
That's not going to do you very good.
No, it's not going to do me good.
So I think what I would like to do, unless you are opposed, I want to talk to you about pre-PUSA, early, like just the very genesis of PUSA, and then what's happening now, and then we can reference the middle. But working with those two bookend stories, I think is cool.
Yeah, the middle's been filled in a lot elsewhere too, and the other two, the bookends have not as much. So.
Right.
Yeah, man.
So we go back. I worked that you peed on me because I worked for you. That's how you treat people that work for you.
Yeah. Only the ones I really like.
But I knew you before that also from whatever Seattle music, and but I don't know really much about. I know just the bullet points. Really, I don't know, where are you from?
Where are you from? I'd be from a little place.
What's your background?
Well, it's guitars and a wall. I'm from Yarrow Point, actually. Technically, it's kind of the east. It's the east side of Lake Washington in Seattle. Grew up on this little peninsula called Yarrow Point, and it was pretty chill. It was like old summer homes. It was a mixture of these like old summer cabins that the affluent people in Seattle built around the turn of the century, because it used to be like a big deal to take a ferry boat or a little, shuttle boat or whatever out to the east side before the bridges existed.
Right.
So there were these kind of like, set way back from the road, kind of creepy little craftsman shacks, and lots of empty lots, and then mixed with like more neo-colonial and modern. I don't know why I'm talking about architecture, but it was kind of just by way of saying like that area has become very affluent and giant McMansion-y kind of things. But it was much funkier when I was growing up there. There were entire lots that were blackberry bushes with tunnels through them that we could explore. So it was a really great place to grow up because it felt like its own little, almost like an island, because it was kind of almost surrounded by water on all sides. And I loved it. I had a really idyllic, wonderful, safe, happy, creative childhood. My younger brother and I would make up songs for hours, like playing with it. Like we'd give an assignment with the Legos, like, all right, make a race car. And then we'd be head down for like 30 minutes working on the race car while we sang weird songs back and forth. So it's just like being creative for the sake of being creative was like a core thing that my brother and I used to do. So yeah, I come from that. I come from kind of like, comfortable, middle class. My dad was a banker. My mom was a housewife. Shit like that.
It sounds like you didn't even grow up suburban as it is now, existing over there in that area. You grew up rurally.
Kind of. I guess technically it was a suburb, but because it was its own little peninsula and it didn't feel like sprawling, like there wasn't that like a kind of anonymous sprawl of a suburb that you think of, like cookie cutter houses and whatever. And we only really had our street and the next street over, and that was the scope of the kids we hung out with. So it was more small towny, We had our own little 4th of July parade. We had it was its own town, actually, technically. We had a mayor. We had a little town hall, 4th of July parade and fireworks and stuff like that. So
Tell me about your
it had a small
involvement in
town
the parade.
Oh yeah, I was definitely involved in the parade. So I think, I don't know how old I was, maybe 7 or 8. The Nordstroms used to live right down the street from me, the store, the Nordstrom store.
Of course.
And they moved, and when they moved, they had to get rid of their go-kart, and their go-kart was this beautiful go-kart with a big Volkswagen steering wheel. It wasn't gas powered; it was just a coaster. But they were trying to sell it, and I talked Johnny Nordstrom down to 50 cents for his go-kart. And I considered it such a coup to negotiate. I bartered with him so hard that I got him down to 1 50-cent piece. And so anyway, every year for the 4th of July parade, we would decorate this go-kart, and that was our float. We'd kind of put all sorts of stuff all over it and crepe paper and paint it. Of course, we painted it, but I was really only aware of paint in the context of making model airplanes and those little tiny testers.
Tiny.
So I'm painting this entire go-kart, and I had to go to the Bartels and buy 50 little containers of model paint, because I didn't know there was another way to buy paint.
For a point of reference, I mean, do kids still build models? Can you buy a model anywhere?
I don't know. I see them in junk stores and flea markets and secondhand stores, like unopened kind of thing. I don't think kids build. I don't know.
Model car,
I think the people that are
model cars. I loved those.
Oh yeah,
things.
I did the cars, the planes. Yeah, I even dabbled in the monsters. Remember, there was Frankenstein and the Mummy and Dracula and all that. But
I never built a ship. Did you do a ship?
I never did a ship. I love the planes. Planes are my favorite. I would take my allowance from the weekend before. I had a routine. On Wednesdays, I would take my bike all the way into Bellevue, where the stores where I go to Bartell Drugs. I'd buy a model kit, take it home, make it over Wednesday and Thursday, admire it on Friday and Saturday, and then on Sunday I would blow it up with fireworks that I had saved from the 4th of July just for year-long model blowing up activities.
Do you think that growing up near Boeing Field because Boeing was in full swing at that point. It was booming. Do you think
Right.
that it influenced your affinity for aeronautical craft?
I had no idea what Boeing Field was when I was growing
Right,
up.
but you saw like a lot of people grow up without that many planes flying overhead, and there are
Yeah, that's
shitloads
true.
of planes flying over Seattle.
Yeah, I guess you're right. That's kind of true, actually. That was like a typical in this area. There, it's a very common like summertime or all year round thing. As you see the airplane going by, all the jets and small craft, and yeah, airplanes were kind of. Oh, and then the blimp, the Goodyear blimp used to toddle around during Seafair,
Oh,
and one
I don't
time went
remember
right
seeing that.
over our
Oh,
house, so close
God,
I could see the pilots' faces, and that kind of blew
really?
my mind. So yeah, I guess there was kind of a like active sky kind of
What about
situation going.
hydroplanes? People in
Mhm.
Nebraska don't know what the fuck a hydroplane is. I'll tell you that
That's
right
true.
now.
They maybe
They
know
don't
it
know.
as the version when you try to hit your brakes in a rainstorm, you
Sure.
hydroplane. But yeah, the hydroplanes, they were exciting. Actually, the house I grew up in, my parents bought from, I believe his name, what was his name? Oh
Did he
man, he
race
was
for
one of,
Ernst?
he might have, Ernst Malmo. Uh, oh God, I'm trying, Chip Hanauer.
Oh,
Chip
sure.
Hanauer was a storied hydroplane pilot. I guess you call him a pilot.
Yeah.
And he lived in our house before, I think, after we moved out, he lived in our house in Bellevue. So
It'd
anyway,
be weird if Uncle Chip just moved in one day.
yeah,
He lived in our house
yeah,
for
yeah, he
6
lived in
months
our house.
before we realized.
Yeah, we're like, what's your name again? What do you do?
Chip.
Oh, hydroplane.
Chip.
Cool. We got a basement. Get in there.
So you were writing songs and doing creative stuff from an early age,
Yeah,
like
really, just for
straight
the sake of it.
always.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, the piano that I played when I was 4 years old, I started real serious piano lessons. I guess my mom had seen something in my randomness with making up songs with my brother. I was playing the piano from a super young age. At about 2, I started banging on the piano with a hammer, and I could make all the strings do something at once. I was like dong dong, and in fact that piano that I banged on with a hammer was the piano that I ended up later sort of practicing on and playing on a lot. And I used to always look down at the divots on the piano from all the whacks I gave it with a hammer and be like, "Yep, this is what I'm supposed to be doing." But yeah,
Still doing it.
so yeah, we started out with serious piano lessons at the age of 4, and that lasted till about 12 or 4, 12, 13, something like that. And but that was
Was that
learning Scott
classical
Joplin.
stuff or
Yeah, it was like a mix of ragtime. I liked ragtime and Eastern European, like Grieg, that like In the Hall, the Mountain King, that spooky kind of stuff, like dun 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 dun
sure?
dun 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 dun. The very first song I ever learned by ear was the theme from the Munsters TV show because I love that kind of spooky, groovy shit,
Yeah.
So that was my first like transposition from memory, from hearing to keyboard.
It's funny. Well, I talk to a lot of people, obviously, and you know, so many people say when I ask them about their early music experiences, they say Kiss got me into playing rock music. That's what got me excited about music. But then their music doesn't sound anything like Kiss.
Yeah,
And
right.
right, but ironically, everything that you just said makes so much sense
Mm.
in my familiarity of what you do and as a musician.
Huh. Yeah.
Like you make playful, kind of spooky, really interesting and psychedelic music.
Yeah.
And everything you just described being fascinated by at age 4 resonates still, like it's still happening.
Yeah. It's kind of true. In fact, that's an interesting connection that I hadn't quite made. I do have this impulse that I've had my whole life that is to make music that is truly who I am. To not, it's funny you bring up Kiss, because I also got into Kiss, but after my huge Beatles arc, I then got into like Blue Oyster Cult and Nazareth and Kiss and stuff like that. But I did always think, I don't want to have to put on makeup and outfits to be on the stage. I want to be myself on stage. And
Sure.
it's taken a lifetime to kind of figure out what that is, because first you have to kind of know yourself. But you're right, like the seed of my like reason to make music was kind of definitely planted when I was very little. Just the joy of playing with my brother, making the Lego race cars and like bantering back and forth and playing with words and enjoying like that kind of surreal kaleidoscopic construction of how, silly words can be. And then, Scott Joplin and ragtime and spookiness, kind of like upbeat, scary, which is kind of what I'm
Right.
doing now, which is another bookend we can get to. But yeah, you're right. It's the seeds, the building blocks, the Lego me was me.
So the keyboard was the first thing you found your musicality on.
Yeah.
Was there a time when you walked away from it to focus on playing the guitar or the bass next? Or like
Yeah.
what came next when you went into your rock music phase? Is that when you started playing music with other people?
Yeah, well, kind of. My very first band playing with other people was I was trying to play a keyboard, but it was a little Casio made this thing called a VL tone, and it was basically a calculator, but you could play it as a keyboard. Had a little onboard speaker. Remember that song, da 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 da, doom 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 doom. That's all Casio VL tone sounds.
That would be
So
very
this,
hip today.
yeah, I mean, it was an amazing. At the time, that was the only electronic keyboard I had, and I was just enamored with it. I think I was like 15 maybe or 14, and I had a band with this guy Arnie Livingston, who later turned out to be a absolute, like proficient bass god. He played bass, and then this guy Dennis played guitar, and I played the VL tone. But we were, total amateurs. We had no mic stands or PA or anything. I took headphones and I took them apart and took one of the earpieces from the headphone and put it on the speaker for the VL tone, and then tapped that for drums and sang into it for the mic on the floor. So I had to lie on the floor with the VL tone on the ground and sing and tap and play the keyboard. So it was like this, long-haired bass player hippie guy, this Hawaiian guy playing guitar, and me on the floor playing a keyboard and singing into a pair of headphones that I'd disassembled.
Performance art.
Man, it was weird. Later, much later in life, I went to see Neutral Milk Hotel, and there was a guy in the band who played a little keyboard on the ground, and I was like, "Oh my god, I know that position and on the team."
Do you think he was looking through your window back then? He was like,
Yeah,
one day,
probably like, "Woo."
one day.
One day. But yeah, I got into I picked up, my dad had a classical guitar, nylon string guitar, and I kind of figured out like what sounded good. Turned out I was figuring out open chords, and I figured that out much later that they were traditional, but I was just kind of like, oh, that's a good sound, and that's a good sound, and that's a good sound. And but I still improvising on the piano was constant. Like me and my brother both kind of learned a basic C blues scale, and we would sit there together or separately and just improvise all day long on the piano. So it kind of never went away, but I didn't really incorporate it into playing until I got to college. And I was in a band where I played acoustic guitar half the time and a clavinet the other half of the time. So I would kind of do
Rad.
half the set with guitar and then bring out the keyboard.
I don't want to skip all the way forward right now, but I do want to ask you, because you're talking about keyboard improvisation and your proficiency there foremostly.
Mm-hmm.
Did you play all of the instruments on your solo record?
The new ones?
Yeah,
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
I
That's
thought
100%.
so.
Yeah.
There is a ripping, like, I wouldn't call it free, but like there's a ripping, like pretty out there keyboard solo. And I was like, God, is that Ballew?
Yeah.
And sure
Yeah.
enough, there's also some ripping, like there's a ripping lead on a song. I was really, really happy listening to it.
Wow. Thank you. I appreciate that,
Yeah.
man. I really do. When I started doing this, yeah, we can get into it, but when I started doing this solo stuff, I just made a real conscious decision. Like I learned from being in bands that ultimately, in my quest to know myself, one of the things I've learned is that I really am not supposed to be in bands because I was good at it and it was fun and it worked. And obviously, it was successful and all that. But somewhere really deep down, I'm like, I'm way more of a mad scientist in a studio using sound like paint or, making kind of like I'm not a sculptor or a painter, but I'm the same kind of like artist, but with sound, like I'm constantly trying to remake Sergeant Pepper's basically by myself. And that just totally feeds me and makes me feel good. And one of the things I love about it is I can be ruthless. Like if I decide the guitar isn't working, and in fact, this song doesn't need guitar or drums at all, it's just electric piano and bass or something, I can erase the guitar without explaining to anybody why I'm erasing.
Well, you're not going to hurt your own feelings.
Exactly. Although sometimes I do kind of hurt my own feelings. I have to, if I'm going to delete the guitar, it's because the song has sat for like 6 months and then I've given it a fresh listen. I'm gone like, nope, on that guitar. But in the meantime, I'm like, I did that guitar. I'm so proud.
Have you gone back and regretted any musical choices that you have deleted or kept?
Not really. No, I always trust that I'm going in a better direction. I don't keep previous mixes of songs. I only
No
ever am dealing with the
demoitis.
current. Yeah. I'm constantly like going forward, assuming that it's getting better and very willing to admit that it isn't if it isn't. But I need
Yeah.
time. Like I have several songs going for future solo records where there's 2 or 3 versions of the song that have different feels and different keys or whatever. And later I'll listen to them and figure out which one's going to be the winner. But yeah, no, I don't. I try. That's a big deal. I try really not to have any regrets. And I do listen to my own music. I like my own music, all of it. Like sometimes I
It's
go on a President's
very
Jag.
likable.
Oh, yeah, exactly.
It's
But I
very
mean,
likable.
like I talk to a lot of creative people and they don't enjoy their own output or they don't allow themselves to enjoy it or take the chance of listening to it. And, you know, I guess it's a risk. Like if I were to put on something that I made and cringe, that's a huge disappointment. So I
Yeah.
love my own music because I made it. Why wouldn't I love it?
I typically go back and revisit music that I've participated in or written or recorded or whatever, not with great regularity, but semi-regular
Mm-hmm.
for sure. I
And
think it's
how do you?
important. I
Yeah,
think it's
I think
important.
there's a lot to be learned from it. I've just recently joined this funky Zoom group. It's a long story, but there's a lot of like actors, writers, directors, novelists, all these interesting people in this group. We meet every Sunday. It's a
It doesn't
Beatles
sound, I'm not in
centric.
it. It doesn't sound that interesting.
No, well, there's a big hole where you should be. It's like it's a square shaped hole that we all look at
Yeah,
every week.
it
And
must
I
be
asked this
huge.
group, I put it to the group like who likes to enjoy their own output, and nobody except
Really?
Sean Nelson. Sean Nelson from Harvey Danger is in the group, and he and I were the only two that enjoy our own output. Yeah,
Wow. That's crazy to me.
crazy to me too. Yeah, because I mean, even if you did cringe, like, well, okay, why am I cringing? What is it about this that you know
It's
isn't?
a good thing to observe how you feel, even if you listen to something that you're unhappy about. I think it can how you can have so many uh emotional you can have so many feelings attached to a song because of what was happening even in the studio that day or in
Yeah,
your life when
Yeah.
like the list goes on, and all those things can come back, and not for the sake of being, you know, nostalgic, but it can be good for you to make sure you've cleared house.
Yeah, I agree. They're like the songs are like photographs, or like I do audio snapshots a lot, or I've interviewed my kids when they were little. I do little interviews with them. All these different ways of kind of marking time, and I am nostalgic. I love nostalgia. I get into reveries of nostalgia that are so vivid. I like close my eyes and put myself back in my bedroom in 1981 and just imagine the atmosphere. And I have a song on one of my solo records called Nostalgia, because sometimes I get so nostalgic that I'm nostalgic for like now. I'm
Right.
nostalgic for this moment as I speak, and the moments are gone. I'm nostalgic for those moments. I'm so sentimental that way.
Let's talk about what happened after you graduated from the calculator keyboard. And
Yeah,
and then take me through what is that, junior high school? That's what I'm imagining.
yeah, yeah,
And then take
yeah.
me all the way to college.
Okay. So the band that I had with the keyboard on the ground was called Spastic Action. Not very
Nice.
PC these days, but we had
That's a great name.
one of our we had a song called Useless Information. I had seen on TV one night, I don't know where I saw this, but some Japanese new wave band, and I just loved, and I had no way to record it or know who they were, but it's like haunted me. And so this whole band, that band's existence was to try to recapture this Japanese new wave band that I saw on TV at like 4 a.m. one night. So we had a song called Useless Information about, I don't know what, about the media or something. It was kind of like punk rock, but
That
calculator
checks
punk
out.
rock. Yeah, that checks out. It was like Kraftwerk and, the Dead Kennedys trying to coexist. And then our other song was I Can't Get No Spastic Action, which was a cover of the
So Devo was on your radar. It was on everyone's radar, really, at
Oh,
that
totally.
point, right? What
Totally.
else was on your radar musically? Like, what were you into?
Well, I mean, the whole entire bulk of my childhood was the Beatles, and specifically Sgt. Pepper's Lonely Hearts Club Band. My brother bought it for my parents in 1967. I was 2.5 when I got my hands on Sgt. Pepper's and listened to it for 7 years exclusively. Like, that's all I didn't know there were other records in the world. I just was like, what is this?
I can't
So I
listen
just
to any of those songs without imagining the album cover, because that was such a massive part of enjoying music back then.
Totally. I mean, that was like the ultimate gaze at the cover while you listen to the whole record. Just who were all these people? I had no idea. I didn't know what,
Who was in the
any
band?
of these. I didn't know who they were. Yeah, exactly. I didn't even know who the Beatles were. I really had no idea. There was no context of them being a phenomenon or culturally important or whatever. I just knew that I loved this record. So anyway, coming out of that, I got into arena rock like Blue Oyster Cult, Nazareth, Kiss, that kind of stuff. And then coming out of that, I got into punk rock like the Sex Pistols, Clash, the core, of that time, punk rock, and other stuff like the Vibrators. There was a band called The Only Ones that I loved. Another Girl, Another Planet was their big song. So yeah, it was constantly a mixture of like, like Devo, B-52s, new wave kind of razor sharp stuff with like punk rock and wide open distorted guitars. And so I've constantly been kind of holding the sort of synthy, the coldness of a synthesizer and the warmth of a guitar, kind of like trying to get the alchemy going between those two. Yeah, so that brings us up to going to college. Yeah,
Did
so
you had
in
high school
college,
band aside from Spastic Action?
oh yeah, right. I had a band called pretentious name, Mute Testimony.
Wow.
My partner Dale, who I wrote songs with, he took psychedelic drugs one time, and I don't know, he was looking at something like a, I don't know, a battery or something. And he's like, the battery has a story, but it can't tell its story. So our songs are going to tell the stories of inanimate objects that can't speak, which totally resonated with me. I mean, I could write a song about a chair and its, inner emotional state all day
Right.
long. So anyway, the band was called Mute Testimony, and it was very much a Wall of Voodoo love letter. Who was just another band that was huge for me. Wall of Voodoo, Oingo Boingo, those kind of new wave bands.
Yeah.
So I had a couple of keyboards, monophonic synthesizers, TR-808 drum machines, MIDI cables, hooking them all up. Uh, a polyphonic kind of organ keyboard, and then Dale played guitar and bass depending on what the song needed. And he was trying to unlock the science of Mark Moreland's style. Do you know Mark Moreland? He was the
I do
guitar
not.
player in he was the guitar player in Wall of Voodoo, and just real famous for these like these big chordal kind of sharp shifting melodic figures. We could never figure out what his tuning was or how he did it. Of course, there was no way to look it up and figure it out back
Right.
then. So, and we did songs about Clint Eastwood and
He's animate.
he's what?
He's animate.
Right, he's animate. Well, yeah, that's true. I guess to us he was just a poster, so inanimate. Um, and that was fun. I have a lot of recordings of that stuff, which will never
Did,
see the light of day because it's
did,
very embarrassing.
did you guys perform or did you just record?
Yeah, we did a little bit. We played at our school at a
Mm-hmm.
can't remember what it was. I think our school had periodic like talent show night kind of things. And so we played at one of those. We had a gig lined up to play at a gallery downtown, but I was dating this French girl and she was in Paris and I was home, and it was the end of summer break. And she was like, well, you need to come see me now. And I was,
You're like,
so
yes.
I was like, okay, fine. And we had a gig and I skipped out on the gig, and I've always felt bad about it. So that was our one actual show I bailed on.
You got to forgive yourself for that.
I think I do.
You've got to
I gotta
unburden
let go.
yourself.
I just feel so bad for Dale. Oh man, I just left him in the dust. But then I went to college. Dale followed, and we started a band with this amazing punk rock drummer named Phil Franklin and a friend of ours, John, who's an artist, a photographer, called Asleep Standing, and did that all through college. We lived together like the Monkees and played a bunch of gigs. We played at CBGB's twice, and
Rad.
Hilly Crystal shook my hand and told me he liked my band. And I was like, at the time, I was like, that's great. But now in retrospect, I'm like, wow, what a amazing opportunity. Yeah, CBGB's was fun to hang out at. I remember going there one afternoon and with my girlfriend was an artist in college, and she sold a painting for $200. So we went to Manhattan and went. All we did was eat out and take cabs, and we ate up the whole $200.
And this is the 80s, right?
Yeah, this is the
if
80s. Yeah,
anyone's thinking to themselves, $200, that's like
yeah,
it's like having $1,000 in your pocket as a
yeah,
21-year-old, right?
exactly. And we just blew the whole $200, and we ended up at CBGB's in the afternoon drinking. And Peter Holsapple, lead singer of a band called the DBs, was there, and I was a fan of this band. And he was hammered, and we all sat at a table, and he was going on, and we were talking about music and stuff. And at one point, he kind of looks at me kind of cross-eyed, and he's like, kid, you're going to make it. I know it. And he just gave me this like seal of approval. And I was like, yeah, okay. Mr. Drunky says I'm going to be fine. So anyway, I'm going off on a tangent, but
then you wrote a song to the contrary years later.
Yeah. Well, actually, I didn't write that song. That was another band at college called Tracy Lord's Ex-Lovers.
Great
And
name.
they wrote great name, really good punk rock band. And I love back in the day, I loved to take the one amazing song from a friend's band that broke up and fell apart and cover it and kind of keep it alive. So that was the one from that band that just I loved so
Well, let
much.
me ask
So
you this. They must be stoked because that went on some
yeah.
compilation, right?
Well, no, that was on our debut record.
Was
That
it
was
on
on
the
the
record?
million selling record. Yeah, or 5 million or
Oh,
whatever. Yeah.
they must have been pretty pleased.
Yeah, it was a little tricky though because Ben, the lead singer guy, I think he took all the money. I think
Right.
he pulled a fast one because another band member, one of the other band members, showed up at one of our gigs in New York after we
Angry.
had broke. Yeah, and he was mad, and I was like, I don't know what you're talking about. I'm paying, I was in.
Yeah.
I don't know. I don't want to really get into it, but apparently
Yeah,
there
yeah,
was
yeah.
some
Okay.
some
Sore
machinations going on with
subject.
where the money went, and
Right.
you know, so
Rough.
it was a little
Business
rough. Yeah, but we
business, am I
didn't.
right?
And then I think the members of the band that got stiffed started a rumor that we stole the song from them or like didn't pay anybody, and so that was kind of a bit of a bummer. Yeah, but the
Drag.
other cover on the album was a cover of "Kick Out the Jams" by the
Right.
MC5, and we Weird Alified it and wrote all new lyrics, and that has kind of a great little story to it. A couple years after we got signed and were doing our thing, I kind of realized we had sent, the record company had made gold record awards when we got to 500,000 copies and, platinum at 1 million. And we'd made them for our parents and a couple of people. And I realized that I hadn't given one to Wayne Kramer, the author of the song, or one of the authors of the song. And so I had the record company send him a award. And then he somehow found my phone number and called me. And he was so appreciative. He was like genuinely touched. And
He's a cool dude.
he's a great guy. He's a great guy. And we struck up a friendship over that. And then, and he told me that initially when we asked Wayne and Patti Smith, who dealt with Fred Sonic Smith's catalog, and Dennis Machine Gun Thompson and all the people that were still alive in the MC5, if we could change the words, they said no. And we're kind of like, shit. So I think our lawyer's partner was Patti Smith's lawyer. So she kind of worked on Patti Smith, and then Patti kind of worked on Wayne, apparently. And he's telling me on this phone call that eventually he had sort of an internal epiphany where he thought, if I say no to this young band who's screwing with our song and really making it their own, I'm the man. I'm squashing creativity and
Right.
progress and evolution. So he's like, I had this internal shift in the way that I related to the MC5 music and our legacy, all because of your ask to cover the song. So it was a really dear kind of time. And eventually, years later, the MC5 came through Seattle. This was like 2015, maybe. And I sang Kick Out the Jams with them. And
Oh,
then
that's
Mark Arm came
so
up and
rad.
did the regular lyrics, and I did my lyrics. And then afterwards, we're all sitting around backstage, and it's yay, yay, yay. And I tell that exact story that I just told about how touched Wayne was, and they're all sitting there in the room, and there's like kind of a, silence after I finish the story. And in the silence, Wayne says, "Actually, I heard you guys were going to be super huge, and I needed a new garage."
I was going to say he had an internal shift, and then 3 years later, he had quite an external shift.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Let me
Anyway,
know if you want to cover one of my 15-second songs for the 30-year anniversary repress.
yeah,
That'd
exactly.
be,
Thumbs up, thumbs straight up.
yeah, that's awesome. Okay,
Yeah, it was a good time.
let's skip back. You get to college
Yeah.
and you're going to school. What did you go to school for?
Fine arts, Bachelor of Fine Arts is what I ended up with. Yeah.
You're lucky it worked out.
Yeah, exactly.
What?
Yeah. I know. I don't know what I was, I went to art school basically to avoid going to music school. I just didn't want to, I didn't want to have the keys to the, I don't know what the metaphor is, the keys to the, theoretical castle
Right.
of how music fits together. I knew I wanted to kind of like hunt and peck and fail and find, I guess it was part of that impulse, like I was saying before, like make music that's truly who I am. I wanted to kind of, and this wasn't even a conscious decision as much as just an intuitive thing. Like, no, I don't want to know. I want to kind of create my own gumbo.
Sure.
Yeah.
Did you graduate?
Oh
Did
yeah,
you
I
finish
did.
school?
I
That's so
graduated.
responsible of you.
I graduated on the honor roll. I have no idea how I did that because I never chose a area of concentration. Everyone around me was like, I'm a printmaker, I'm a painter, I'm a sculptor. And I just would go like, I'm melting metal. Now I'm making ambient music. And now I'm, I don't know what, making a video. And so I was at graduation and they're reading the honor roll. And since my last name starts with B, it was pretty close to the top and I was paying attention and they're like, Chris Ballew. Turned out I had a 3.75 grade point average for the whole experience of being at school. And I had no idea how I did it. I don't know.
Really?
Yeah.
Because at the time you're also gigging, probably carrying on like other college kids, all
Yeah.
the
There
usual.
was definitely some carrying on. We didn't gig that much. I mean, we played CBs twice, like it wasn't that. And we played on campus a lot. But mostly we just, goofed
Did you
off.
stay in Boston after?
Well, the school was in New York. It was State University of New York at Purchase.
Oh, I
And
thought
then,
that
so it's
you,
in, yeah, I was
for
in White
some reason.
Plains. Yeah.
Oh,
So New York was more the center for school. And then I ended up in Boston because one of the last classes I took was a visiting artist thing, and the artist who was visiting was from Boston. And at the end of my senior year, he's like, if anyone wants a job, come to Boston. You can work for me. He did these big architectural installations with sensors, like light beams that people could break, or a train would break, or um, you know,
wow.
people would reach up and play like on a subway platform. They'd be set up so that when the train came in, they would break all the beams, and then people could also play them, and they would trigger environmental sounds and synthesizers and weird shit. And so it was a lot of like traveling all over the world, setting up these installations. So it was a really amazing job. And the drummer from my band and I both went to Boston and
Oh,
worked
that's
for this guy.
awesome.
Yeah, it was
Cool.
a great job. He was one of those bosses where he's like, I need a 1/60th scale of this building constructed in 2 days. Figure it out.
And you would
And
do
I'd
that,
have
and then he would create the points where the light was going to be coming from.
yeah. He worked in light and sound in these big public spaces. So yeah,
Wow.
it was get real familiar with the table saw and the foam core.
That's my new genre.
Table saw, yeah, foam
I'm
core.
kind of
I love
I'm kind of more post foam core.
post foam core.
Really, the early foam core bands I was into it, but
They were a little
I'm a little
stiff,
more. They were a little stiff. I'm a little more foamy.
foamy,
Post foam.
post
Uh,
foam.
when you at what point did you become involved in playing music with Sandman?
Oh, that's a good question. It's funny. Mark and I one time sat down and tried to figure out how we met each other, and we could not figure it out. Neither
You
of
were
us
just
could remember.
around.
Yeah, well, so I was in Boston, and I guess I remember not knowing him, but seeing Morphine at a loft party, like kind of thing. And I think maybe that's where we met, or maybe we had mutual friends. But um, I think, yeah, we really had a great relation. He kind of saw me as a protege. Like I was younger than him by, I don't know, 6 years or so or more. Can't remember now.
Which is a lifetime in your 20s.
Yeah, yeah. And so we just got real close real fast, and he showed me how to play the two string. In fact, the very two string guitar that I picked up off his wall is right here. I have it set up as a 6 string now because I'm
Wow.
doing a lot more 6 string stuff lately. But this is the guitar that I picked up and played in his studio when it was a 2 string, and just went, "What's this? that is amazing. It just felt so, it felt so good. It kind of, I don't know, it made my minimalist side feel really happy. And it also allowed me to kind of wear my influences on my sleeve and play what I thought sounded exactly like a Buzzcock song. But because it was two strings, it sounded like Fresh or a
Right.
Kiss song or a, Steve Miller song or even the Beatles or whatever. I just felt like I could do anything on that instrument and it sounded new. Um, and so, yeah, he really changed my life by, showing me that setup. And then I ended up living there with him, and we had a band together called Supergroup. It was an all improvisational situation. We'd play for like 3 hours at a time at this Irish bar called the Plow and Stars in between Central Square and Harvard Square. And I was a house painter at the time, and I had no gear at all, and Mark had all the gear. So I would literally come in like covered in paint with a pick, and Mark would have set up the entire PA and everything, and he would just hand me that instrument with the two
Wow.
strings on it, and we'd be just like 1, 2, 3, go, and we'd figure out something, and like we'd challenge each other to write songs. We'd make up titles like, Mark, you have to write a song called "Cantaloupes from Hell," and he would just have to do it. And then eventually people
But
started
he
writing
was
songs.
fun. Like his band wasn't funny, right? He
No,
was, but
yeah,
and
that's
you have a very you project a sense of playfulness and humor. I've always been intrigued by the
right.
idea of you doing this when you've told me the story in the past.
Yeah.
How did that work?
Well, because we were sort of, at least on stage, we were definitely kind of a yin and yang kind of thing.
Right.
Like that old. There was some old Warner Brothers cartoon where it was two dogs, and one of the dogs is big and kind of tough, and the other dog's little, and the other little dog is always like, "We're friends, right, Ralphie? We're friends, huh? We're friends, huh? Yeah, we're friends, yeah." And it was kind of like that. I was like, "We're friends, Mark, right? Yeah, yeah, yeah." So he was kind of like the tent pole, and I was the clown, just like bouncing around. But the wonderful thing was he just let me be that. He wasn't
Right.
about trying to make me into something in his own image. He was about trying to help me be me. And his coolness and solidness on stage gave me the freedom to be weird. And up till then, I hadn't, I was a pretty effusive performer, but I hadn't really given my silly side or my kind of funny side equal sort of respect. Like I was trying to write important songs about ideas or girls, love, loss, kind of. And I was writing all these songs about chickens and monkeys and pigs and stuff, but they were second class citizens. I was like, those aren't real songs. And
Right.
then two things happened. One thing was playing with Mark and really accessing my, stream, kind of like when I was with my brother with our heads down making Lego cars. It was like this
Sure.
similar kind of thing. And the other was at that same bar, Plow and Stars. I stumbled in one day, and on the stage was this guy, older gentleman, playing a 12-string guitar, singing these folk songs but he had kind of a bounce to him and kind of a groove, and they were all about frogs and monkeys and pigs and chickens, and I was like, wow, now that's got integrity and it's got silly lyrics. There's something going on there. It turned out that guy was Spider John Kerner, who was a fixture of the like 60s blues folk scene. Back in the 60s, he tried to play authentic, blues that sounded like he was a black guy on a porch. And then one day he realized, what am I doing playing this music? It isn't who I am. And he started taking public domain folk songs and jazzing them up and making them his own. And anyway, that bar, Plow and Stars, is where I really like figured out a lot of who I was and drank a lot of Guinness at the same
Right.
time.
Amazing.
So yeah, Mark.
Uh,
But see, offstage, Mark was, he was kind of played it cool, but he loved being funny. He loved being silly. I loved making him laugh. Like I've noticed that I have a kind of a pattern. Like a lot of my friends are kind of dark people.
Yeah.
But I like to make them crack up. There's
Right.
nothing more satisfying for me than taking a dark cloud human and making them laugh. So, and
There's
it didn't
nothing
happen all
better.
the
There's
time.
nothing better than making Ben Shepherd bust a gut.
Yeah. Yeah.
I'll tell you
Yeah. Yeah.
what.
Yeah. Yeah. I love
Love
Ben.
him.
I love
Love
him.
him.
He's such a big dark. He's like a dark cloud in an overcoat.
But if he loves you, he loves you. Just
I
make
know.
sure he loves you.
He came to a Casper Baby. We haven't touched on Casper Baby Pants yet, but the music I did for little kids and parents and stuff. He came to a show on Bainbridge one time, and he was just so into it. He had a new baby at the time too, and he was just like, "That was the greatest thing I've ever seen. Oh my god, what do you need? Can I help you? Can I sell merch for you? Like, let me work. Let me in." He's like, "I want in on this."
He is
And I had came to
absolutely
me.
that guy. He would have sold your merch. He would have sold your Casper Baby Pants rattles or whatever.
Yes,
He would have done
exactly.
it.
He was just like, "I want in on this." So yeah, he's a good man.
Uh, so working for you guys for the period of time, I think I worked for you guys maybe for a year. Went to Europe with you a couple times, did some trips around the States, and
Yeah.
the astounding thing is, that we all see a lot of great stage performers, but there's always like even some of the greats. There's that moment of hesitation or like, I'm gonna stick with what I know, and you thrive in this remarkable place where it's like, nope, like let's go, like green light, the light is green, let's go, I don't know what's around the corner. and
Yeah.
and it sounds like that was all like those seeds were planted early with your brother, but really they blossomed at the star. Is the Star and Plow?
The Plow and Stars. Yeah.
Plow and Star. That is that right?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, that supergroup experience with Mark, there were so many times when I just sort of would sit back and take stock of where I was. Like our drummer, we had a revolving drummers, and one of them was this guy, Mickey Bones, who was phenomenal. He kind of had his background was kind of more like New Orleans swing jazz kind of. So he added this like bounce. Anyway, there were so many times when I would look around and be just like, this is the greatest moment. I think a lot of my life after Supergroup was trying to find that again. And so that's why in a thing like The Presidents, where, once we hit and became big, and you stand up in front of, I mean, you've stood up in front of crowds of tens of thousands. You know what that's like.
Yeah.
It's interesting, it's awe-inspiring and everything, but you also have to kind of just be conscious of, let's just crank up the machinery, and little jokes or taking things off on a tangent aren't really going to translate in this environment.
No.
So I think that made me want it even more. It made me not want to lose the ability to be in the now and have that beginner's mind, like anything could happen, even if we were standing up in front of tens of thousands of people. Or I guess, you know what, we didn't really try to pull it off as much in front of the big crowds. We would definitely, though, feel the lack in front of a big crowd. And then when we got in front of a more manageable, smaller crowd, we're like, okay, now we can really kind of like that second round, during which you worked for us. It was much more rare that we would do the big shows. It was more like we were doing, like, I don't know, 500 to 1,000 clubs or stuff like that. And that's where
It's
we
so
could,
great.
yeah, we could get back to getting away with being random when the opportunity presented. Yeah.
Right.
So, yeah,
It's
it's just,
like
I guess,
any
about,
idea. Like any idea, like State of the Nation speech. Like
right.
you're never getting into the cracks. It's always like broad strokes, right?
Right. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Broad
Yeah.
stroke.
Yeah. So, I mean, it's a thing about performing that's exciting, is like being alive in the moment. And I could definitely, there were times during the first phase from 94 to 98 where I got so sort of numb to the situation that I would just go, I'd be thinking about salad dressing while we were playing. Like, what if you put a little mustard in there, a little sugar, and then, or, I would
Right.
just wander off. It was almost like driving. If you ever drive the same route every day for a long time, sometimes you arrive and you're like, whoa, I have no memory of the trip here.
Autopilot.
So
Yeah.
yeah, that would happen. And that was part of the reason I wanted to get away from it, is to get, I don't know, somehow. I'm a big believer, like, you can't find the girl you want to be with until you break up with the one you're with, or quit the job you have to get the job you want. So when the presidents broke up for the first time, it was really that. It was like, I got to clear the decks here and figure out a way back to something more core for myself.
Right.
Yeah.
I don't. I know that you went and toured with Beck. Was that before? That was between Boston and the Presidents?
Yeah. Well, Boston ended in. I was back and forth in 90, 91, 92. I was kind of like painting houses in the summer in Boston, living in Seattle in the winter, and the Presidents started in 93. Kind of fall of 93. Our first real show was December 93. And then in early 94, I got a phone call from Mary Lou Lord, who was a busker that I used to share spaces with in Boston. I used to play on the street in Boston. That was another huge proving ground for,
Right.
connecting with an audience and making someone who's going to work stop and listen to my original song. Those were super challenging. But anyway, she called, and she had a publicist or a publisher who shared, who Beck had too. They shared a publisher. And the publisher was helping Beck canvas for band members because he got signed, but he didn't have a band. And Mary Lou thought of me. And so she called me and said, hey, there's this guy Beck, and he's going to be huge, and you should be in his band. You guys are totally in the same universe, orbiting the same planet or whatever.
I would say so.
I ignored her. Basically, I ignored her because it's as if, I was working for my brother at the time at home, drumming up business on the phone, and so I was just like sitting there in my underpants, like talking to people about their computer networks. And then if I got a song idea, I would stop calling and 4-track for a while, and then I'd call some more. So I was like, yeah, life's pretty good. It's as if your phone rang and somebody said, hey, Ronald the Unicorn is getting signed, and Ronald is going to be massive, and you got to play guitar for him. You're like, Ronald the Unicorn? I don't know.
Right.
I don't know who Ronald the Unicorn is. But I ended up paying attention when she called me again and insisted, and he was coming through Seattle to do a couple shows. So she's like, why don't you come to the shows, meet him, and see if you guys hit it off. And
was it the OK Hotel show?
Yeah, he did the Crocodile and the OK Hotel show. Crocodile was first, and it was just him with a guitar. And it was like the same thing that I loved about Sgt. Pepper's when I was a little kid, which is that I could see the songs. I could see the picture.
Right.
The lyrics were like painting pictures. His lyrics were painting super vivid pictures for me, especially with just the acoustic. You could hear everything. And that's how we bonded afterwards. I told him that, and he's like, that's amazing. And then the next night at the OK Hotel, the backing track he was using to do Loser was the only song he was doing with a DAT tape backing track. And the DAT machine broke. And he was kind of flailing a little bit on stage. And I think I tapped into that supergroup thing, and I just jumped up on stage and grabbed a harmonica and started playing it. And he grabbed a harmonica and started playing. And eventually, actually, to bring it all around as a callback, we ended up playing a Casio with our noses on the ground. and back to the VL tone. Those early skills paid off. playing a tiny keyboard on the ground.
What and do so they say about preparation and opportunity is where preparation and some other
preparation
shit
and tiny. It's where preparation and tiny Casio keyboards come together.
And those keyboards.
Yeah, nose boards. We ended up like tangled up together, wrestling and covered in wires and dust and playing harmonicas. Just an absolute bizarre free for all. It was super fun. I hadn't felt that free with somebody in a long time, so it was great. And then I went to Olympia and played on a couple songs. He was making an album at Calvin Johnson's studio in Olympia, the One Foot in the Grave album. So my audition was to go down there with this guitar and this slide, which I still have and still use.
Wow.
And I went to the training musician. I bought that guitar. I bought a slide. I went to the bus station. I went down to Olympia, walked to Calvin's house, went into the basement. They said, play on this song. I literally didn't stop. I just went like, and I hunted and pecked on a song. I didn't know how to play slide, but he didn't want proficiency. He wanted, fearlessness, I guess, or something.
Right.
So anyway, that was my audition, and I got the gig, and I went out on 2 tours with him. First one was a van tour. Second one was a bus tour. But it became pretty obvious early on that I wasn't really going to fit in the band long term. He was trying to kind of distract from the loser thing. He didn't want to be like the loser slacker, spokesperson of a generation kind of thing. He didn't really like that song, and which was a definite lesson for me. Like, don't release a song you don't totally love, because it could become a hit and then you're stuck. And he kind of wanted to, he wanted to kind of be Sonic Youth Jr. There was a lot of like noise and grit and dirt and kind of this like atonal punk rock shit that was going on. And it just wasn't my style. I was trying to bounce around and have fun and wear a gold cowboy hat and, be ridiculous. So eventually he asked me to be more demonic on stage. And I was like, I got to go. The Presidents had already started. So I called Jason back in Seattle. He was selling our cassette over the bar at the Comet, and he was selling a lot of them. And so the combination of knowing that the band was still, catching heat, even though we weren't playing gigs, and the fact that Beck was kind of like indicating that I wasn't really fitting in ultimately, led me back to Seattle. And that's when the Presidents really dug in and started playing as much as we could. Now, later, I saw Beck's band. The Presidents actually ended up playing gigs, radio station sponsored gigs with his band. And it was an absolute Vegas show. It was like,
Right.
he was almost doing the James Brown, like put on the cape and try to leave and like throw the cape off. It was all entertainment value. And I was like, ha ha. And actually,
he's reinvented
I was going to say,
himself many times.
yeah, that's true. And you know what? To his credit, he didn't know he'd never been in a band before when we were, I was in his very first band. And so he didn't really know how he wanted it to sound, or, he was finding his way. And he just happened to find his way to a place where I already was. And so, but I'm actually glad, because if the band I was in had the tone that he eventually had, I might not have quit, because it would have been so much fun.
Right.
So it's great that I quit, went back, did the Presidents, blah, blah, blah. So it all worked out.
And it also, you guys were doing what kind of shows on those 2 tours?
Oh, the first one was out of control because he was skyrocketing in popularity, but they did this thing on purpose where they booked venues that were too small, so that there'd be a line, so that people couldn't get in, that whole thing, which I don't really agree with, because it makes actual people's lives stressful, and we would end up adding a second show a lot of times. And Beck and I actually both ended up with pneumonia on that tour. And we were actually in the hospital in an exam room in our little paper gowns when we found out that Kurt Cobain had killed himself. It was kind of a weird moment. We're like, because it was like Beck and I were little kids seeing the doctor, and then all of a sudden that morning, I guess it was that morning, it wasn't in the room, but
right.
Anyway, weird memories. But I'll never forget one time the venue was so small and the crowd was so close, and Beck tried to stage dive and be passed around, but he couldn't get to the top of the crowd. But he hit the crowd. He's a little guy. He's very svelte. So he hit the crowd, and all these hands came out and grabbed him. And so he was just like stuck to the crowd. You know what I mean?
Velcro.
Like Velcro. Like if he had a Velcro suit on and got thrown against the wall.
Right.
And I laughed so hard. I'll never forget that look of him just like, and looking at me like, what do I do? Like, it was so funny. But
that's incredible.
Yeah. It ended up being real hard on him because he wasn't used to that lifestyle at all. I wasn't either, but to his credit, That was my first time going on tour. Yeah, basically, I never slogged it out in the trenches. Like I went right to major label signed artist uh, world. Of course, like I said, the first tour was a van tour, and it was small clubs and stuff. So it wasn't like I stepped onto an arena stage out of nothing.
Right.
But the second tour was much bigger places, and we had buses and things like that. So
What do you think? What experiences from those two tours did you carry over into when the president started touring? Like, what do you
well,
what do you
definitely the idea of loving every song you release. Like watching Beck struggle with Loser was a huge lesson, like I said. But and then just valuing entertainment. Like I knew I wanted to be super entertaining. That I would not be shoegazing in any way, shape, or form. There was one gig we did where we opened up for Evil Knievel.
what?
I know. Evil Knievel was going around doing he was in full Evil Knievel costume, but at a podium doing a talk about like a motivational speech, basically. And so that was the one night I convinced the band to let's all wear the craziest shit we can wear. Let's put on a show. Let's just be super Vegas entertainment one night for Evil Knievel. And we did. And so that, I guess I took away from the whole experience the joy of that night. Like I was like, yeah, this is what I want to do. I want to reach out and like tickle everybody.
Right. And so we all know what happened next. You guys had a residency and released a record. It got picked up. Ended up being a huge success and changed
Yeah.
the three of your lives and other lives.
Yeah.
Um, and it's amazing. And what an incredible time, right?
Well, yeah, it was everything at once. It was absolutely like super validating. Sorry, I'm just going to turn that up. It was super validating and terrifying. It was like life as we knew it was all shaken up. We couldn't just you know smoke pot and wait for our friends to come over in the afternoon and play frisbee in the park and maybe play a show just because it made our days more exciting, and then watch Star Trek while we smoked
Right.
more pot and then go to sleep. And that's where it's funny because all the songs came out of the joy of leaving Boston and driving back in my little VW van. I had to go all the way to the south end of the United States, or the southernmost route, because I had no heat and it was January. Oh, did you just go away?
No, it's
Oh,
okay. It
okay.
might have looked like that, but it's okay.
Okay. So I drove my little VW van all the way across country, and I came home to Seattle, and just like being home in Seattle made me feel so like joyous and connected, and like I'd arrived at what will now be my actual destination. All that joy got put into the songs that became the Presidents. And so there was this like wonderful feeling of validation on that level. But then life changed to the point where I couldn't be in Seattle as much as I really wanted to kind of
Right.
continue to feed off that joy of being home. So it
Certainly
was a
not in the
double-edged
summer.
sword. What's that?
Certainly not in the summer if the train is rolling with your band.
Yeah. Well, and we were being sent to Europe like as all the time. We were being sent to Germany for some dumb reason. Like we went to Germany 5 times in 1995 when we should have been building in the US. Anyway, that's a whole story, but
Germans are really well known for their sense of humor.
I know. Well, it turned out I went out to lunch eventually in New York with the Columbia person who was in charge of breaking us in Germany. And I took her aside, and she'd had a couple of white wines. And I was kind of like, what are you doing? Why are you doing this to us? What's wrong with you? And she's like, I'm terrified of losing my job. And my job is to break you in Germany. And I was like, you're not, we're never, the venues we were playing were just getting smaller and smaller and smaller in Germany. Anyway, it was a lesson in like, oh, I see. Everyone in this world is afraid, and
Music business.
oh my god, yeah, it's not music friends.
That's right.
So anyway, it was everything. It was a kaleidoscopic experience. There were super amazing experiences, super high, meeting incredible people. And then super low, like lonely hotel rooms and missing my family. And the very thing that nurtured this music in the first place was gone, kind of.
Right.
So, yeah, it was everything at once.
Let's talk about hey, Mr. Big, come here. Mr. Big. Come here, Mr. Big.
Senor Grande.
That's right. Mr. Big, the big Punisher.
Mm.
The
Hey, Mr. Big.
Punisher. Shut it.
Shut it.
Let's talk about your record, your current record, because
Oh, sure.
you sent me the link. I listened to it 10 times.
Wow.
And it's really a golden little piece of magic. And I feel
Thank
like
you.
after this conversation, so many things make sense to me. I think it really is the culmination of your entire story. Like it has very well orchestrated parts. Like when you think about the great, if you think about Zombies records or the Beach Boys or the Beatles, you think about these
Right.
kinds of parts. The melodies, like the song would be great with an acoustic guitar and the vocal, but no, you get everything.
Right.
The keyboard playing and the guitar playing, everything, like you're such a groovy bass player. The guitar
Mm.
playing is phenomenal, but I was blown away by your keyboard playing. And I
Thanks, man.
thought, I mean, there was actually the moment where I was like, I wonder who played that. Did Chris play that? It seems so fucking wild.
Yeah.
And so the other thing that struck me were the lyrics, because it's not all silly haha. Like
Yeah. Right.
it's not songs about monkey farts.
Right.
So how you doing? You all right?
Yeah.
It sounds like some stuff happened and you wrote some songs, and
Oh, yeah.
it
Well, lyrically, it's a lot of it is kind of, I've been sort of for many, I was brought up Catholic, like God, Jesus, church. I was an altar boy, that whole thing. Eventually I started to think, this is just a story. I mean, it's a fine story, but I don't believe it. I don't think this is really what's going on.
right.
And my mom was so desperate to keep me sort of in the fold that she would bribe me to do my altar boy duties at the church. And I asked, like, okay, give me a microphone. She bought me a mic. I was getting all my gear through being an altar boy.
Right.
But eventually I asked her for a copy of Back in Black by AC/DC. And and I remember I did the Altar Boys thing, and then we went to the record store. I got the record. I remember holding it in the car and looking at it on the way home and going, "This is wrong. I should not be. I should just do the rock and roll thing. Forget the church. Like I
Right.
need to pick one. I can't be getting bribed with Back in Black for doing my altar boy duties." Anyway, all by way of saying, I didn't have a spirituality to take that story's place. And so I've always, decades go by, I'm like, there's got to be some other perspective, some other way of finding peace with existence, and maybe answering those big questions, and managing fear, and anxiety and regret and whatever else, death. And eventually, after years of kind of hunting and pecking and searching, I've kind of found like a mixture of like quantum physics and spirituality, and a way of relating to my ego, where I speak to it empathetically and kind of have a dialogue. All these different sort of new, like, perspective shifting ideas have kind of come into focus in the last few years, especially through listening to this guy Ram Dass, who's a just incredible lecturer about spirituality. He's super funny. He's very human. He's very fallible, but he's also very like cosmic and expansive. And when I started listening to him, I just kept nodding, like, yeah, 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 that's it, that's it. Like I already knew it, you know. And so a lot of these lyrics are about that. They're about ego management. They're about fear of death. They're about anxiety. They're about joy and boundless happiness at just getting to be alive at all. Yeah, all and you know, but it's fun because I'm getting to play with language with those topics and still be silly with words sometimes, but
It
all in
still feels
service.
playful.
Yeah, it's very. That's it. I'm being very playful, and I'm really only. I decided in this lyrically in this new direction I'm going in that I really am just going to speak in the first person. Like, this is what's happening to me. I don't really like a lot of songs where it's like, here's what's wrong with you, or you need to do this, or even if it's encouraging, like, hold your head up and you can do it, that kind of thing. I really wanted to actually just write about what goes on inside me and then hope that it resonates with what goes on inside other people. And so musically, I'm trying to make it kind of groovy. Like you should be able to dance to it or nap to it. A lot of times when I'm working on this new music, if I get sleepy, I'm like, okay, that's good. I'm on the right track. I don't, and I really am taking a page out of my fascination with like, there's an English band called Loop, like super heavy. Do you know Loop?
No.
Uh, oh, they're great. They're just super repetitive. They're like if raw power got stuck on one chord progression and just like kept going, like two measures and just kept going. So I love like Spaceman 3, Spiritualized, these that band Loop, these just cyclical things. So I've been playing with the idea of like taking kind of a lot of the pop craft, like turning down the pop craft knob and turning up the trancy kind of
Yeah.
repetitive thing to kind of accompany these like more cosmic ideas and trying to find a chemistry where it's like some songs I'll let the pop craft kind of come back in, and like it's these two knobs that I kind of play with now that are fun. I mean, bottom line is I feel like I'm at the top of my game. Like I understand how to make music that is really me now, and I finally get it. And you know, it's kind of become also like a hobby, and I've taken the pressure off of it being a big deal, or you know, selling a million copies or selling 10 copies. I don't know, or selling it all. I like giving it away. I give it away on my website and Bandcamp and all that. So it's thrilling, man. And when this happens, when I uncork the volcano and find the right alchemy for music and lyrics and intent and feel, and it all comes together, I just write like crazy. And I'm staring right now. I've got a folder here on my laptop called Songs, Unreleased Songs. It's got like, oh God, like 80. I've got like 80 songs that are basically ready to go for future albums. They're
Wow.
just, the other thing that's happening is I'm finishing old songs, like songs I wrote in the early 80s with my two boom boxes and my synthesizers and my terrible fake English accent. And, you know, like, and but I'm listening to him and I'm like, there's something in there that's true. Like I had some intention, and eventually I can kind of tease out like what I was really trying to get at under all the shitty recording and embarrassing performances.
Wow.
So that's really fun. I'm almost like covering myself as a younger person in this some of these new songs. So there's a
Interesting.
whole there's a whole, so much going on, and you know, I just feel like a craftsperson. I feel like a guy who has a job, and then on the weekends he goes into his garage and he makes beautiful chairs. You know, like for no reason, nobody needs to sit on them. He's just making them because he can, and they're, you know, you take your time and you just like really get this chair beautiful. It's I'm just working on these songs and releasing them without any expectations, as if I'm just making chairs. I have a little thing if I get sort of distracted by expectations, I say to myself, nobody cares. I'm just making chairs. Just let it be.
I mean, what other reason do you need? But and I also want to say, for whatever it's worth, I think you're at the top of your game too.
Thank you.
I like easily, and I think that that's a pretty relevant statement to make, considering your body of work. I mean, including Casper Baby Pants and Giraffes and
Right.
many other things, um, little side streets that you've
Yeah.
traveled down a little bit.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, it's really, it was, I was so happy to sit with and listen to this music.
Wow. Thank you, man. And so I'm just curious, which was it Primitive God, the latest one that you're listening to?
Yes.
Yeah.
I
Okay,
just
cool.
I had it on in my earbuds at work, and I just put it on repeat and listened to it for the entire day.
Oh, wow. That's amazing. Yeah, that's so cool. Well, it really means a lot to hear that because I'm sort of operating in a vacuum. In fact, I think, is there a song on that album called Breathe? There's a song on one of my albums called Breathing in a Vacuum. Um, and some days I feel like I'm just really like, uh, I promote that sort of detached, you know, um, guy in his garage making chairs, crafts person doing his craft thing. But sometimes when I do hear from somebody like you that has experienced it and enjoys it, it's a real thrill because I feel like, I don't know. Yeah, I feel really kind of on a desert island lately making this stuff. It's a
Right.
beautiful island, but sometimes it's nice when a bottle washes up and there's a note inside that says, "It's good.
Keep going. Uh-oh.
Keep going. You can do it." Yeah. Yeah. I just finished my fourth album. I just sent it off to the distributor yesterday. So it's coming out in January. I'm doing two a year, July and January.
2 albums a year.
Yep. Two albums a year. And for the foreseeable future. So we'll see. Yeah.
Wow. Well, it sounds like you have the material to back that plan up
I,
for a
I
while.
do. I have too much. In fact, I got a wild hair the other day and I sequenced the fifth record already. I just was like, you know what? I'm ready. The songs are ready. There it is. So,
Wow.
yeah, I don't know. When during the pandemic, I put out 3 Casper Baby Pants records in quick succession too. So I'm just trying to get all this stuff out before I keel over.
It's interesting that you say that. I I find that, for one, I quit drinking, which you've seen me at some of my worst. I would
I
say
thought you
it's
were
been
going to say. I thought you were going to say you've seen some of my work.
you have seen some of my work,
You
but
have seen some of my work.
it's been a really good thing for me. But in that, uh, a lot of my energy, and coupled with just being older and like seeing more people pass, uh,
Mm-hmm.
you know, I'm motivated to follow through on all the silly ideas that I
Mm-hmm.
have. Some of them aren't silly. Some of them are pretty good ideas. Some of them are silly and still deserve following through. Do you
Yeah.
feel motivated by by the finite amount of time that you have left in this experience?
I do. Yeah, it's funny. A lot of my songs are about managing sort of fear of death, or or kind of rewriting your relationship with death to be about. Well, there's the story that Ram Dass tells about some spiritual leader he was talking to who said that he said a couple things about death that I really like. He said death is perfectly safe, and death is like taking off a tight shoe. So it's like this. They're like thinking about it as if it's like this like
Those things
this.
make sense to me.
They really do. I mean, we're kind of I think we're designed to, if we're, as long as we're not being, as long as we're not going to die while we're being like devoured by rats or something terrible from the feet up. um
It's
I think
also not
it's
going to last
generally,
forever.
yeah, right, it's all changeable. It's all changing and it's all mutating and all that, but yeah, I am motivated by that. Not not entirely, but that's a little, it's a little fear. And it's a fear in the back of my mind. Like I'm kind of constantly thinking like, okay, what if I went out today and was in a head-on collision or something and died? What would Kate do? What would my wife do with all these unfinished songs? And luckily I have a
Right.
couple of co-producers. Pete Droge
Uh,
and my friend Mark Heberlein are co-producers on these new albums. and so they would take over and release them. So it's kind of like I have bandmates, but they only give me feedback. They don't play anything. So
Right.
it's pretty great. Yeah.
Are you also mixing these?
Yeah. I'm
Are you
mixing them in the box
Sounds great.
on
Very
a
cool.
laptop. Yeah, the laptop.
Are you mixing in headphones?
No, some. I mean, I master the albums myself too, so I just basically mix them here in the studio, and then I take them in the car and on the Bose Wave Radio for sort of like the bass fascinated consumer gear. Headphones. I have these Mackie headphones that I love, and I even play it on the phone, just the speaker in the phone or the speakers on the laptop, and just sort of wait for something to reach out and slap me like, ooh, that's too much tambourine, or this song's way too quiet. And that's why I have Pete too. Pete Droge is really my like late stage guy that I give the pretty much finished record to. And he goes like, okay, that tambourine's too hot. There's too much bass on this. It's all highs and lows, which I don't hear. So really, yeah, I just master them myself. I just wanted this to be no pressure. I just kind of want it to
Yeah.
be fun and easy, and kind of harken back to when I did have those two boom boxes and I was doing bouncing back and forth, just kind of playing. I just want to play around, and I don't want to be pro. Early in the stages of making this new music, I thought, well, maybe I need a real drummer or maybe I want to ask guest musicians to play. But then I got, like I said before, like the ability to be ruthless with taking stuff out and editing and muting and getting rid of things is way more, easy to pull off when I'm the only one whose feelings are being hurt. So,
Sure.
but as we all know, feelings are real. So
Feelings are real.
they are real. Did you make that up, or did you? I feel like you and I made that up. Did
I
we?
had
Or
a sweatshirt.
you had a sweatshirt?
I had a sweatshirt that said feelings are real on it, and I don't even remember
Okay.
where I got it. I might have found it at a thrift store, but it
Right.
also came up in an argument with an ex-girlfriend, like
Right.
in one of these things.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
And I think that I downplayed some feeling, like I have a feeling that this is happening, and I was like,
Right.
"Th-
Yeah.
fuck your feeling." And
Mm.
she said feelings are real, and it was it was galvanized, it was cast in the
Yeah.
lexicon of our future, of our entire lives.
I used it when I was really struggling with trying to get out of the presidents and move on. There was a bunch of years there where I was like, okay, I know this isn't really what I want to do forever, but I did. It was hard for me to say. I had a whole people pleasing thing. It was hard for me to disappoint Jason and Andrew and
Sure.
people who worked for us. And anyway, I kept thinking like, well, feelings are real. These are my real feelings. My feeling is I need to move on, and like, yeah. So anyway, I just mentioned it too because
She
I
was
listened
right.
to yeah,
She was right.
yeah. I listened to Roderick on the Line a lot, and they've been heavily quoting you. The
Feelings
feelings
are
are real.
real. Feelings are real.
They are, man, 100%.
This
Yeah, I
is
mean,
like that because it's a lot harder to be in touch with your feelings and express them than
yeah,
than it is to just bury them and uh,
yeah,
be a traditional man.
sure, yeah, yeah, right. Somehow being numb is manly. I don't really understand that. So yeah, I mean, that's again not to go on and on about the new stuff too much, but that's what I love about this new stuff is I'm really kind of like I'm getting to write about big ideas, but um, do it in a playful way, and kind of look at my own neuroses and let them be part of the mix. Like, all right, like I have a song called "Parasite by My Side," which is about my ego. It's like, yes, you are a parasite. Yes, you are hurting me, but I am not going to get rid of you. You are part of me, and you are going to be. You're my partner, and
Right.
we're just going to have a dialogue, and we're going to talk all the time, and you're going to be a bad. You're going to be bad, and I'm going to forgive you and whatever. So it's yeah, it's this. It's important to have that. It's important as a human to have that dialogue. It's funny that manliness and manliness and how it relates to weakness is kind of gotten in the way of people evolving.
I don't know. I know I am the furthest from knowing how people raise kids these days because it's been a long time since I've been a kid and I don't have one. But I hope I hope that young people are being instilled with that idea. It's a
They are in my yeah. I mean,
more
I
of
make
an
a big deal.
more of an
Yeah,
Eastern idea than a Western idea.
yeah, yeah. I make a big deal with my kids. Like if since they were really little, my number one sort of thing that I say to them, which is I didn't make up or anything, which is just know yourself. Get to know yourself, know what you want, know what you don't want, and check in with your body and your feeling. Check in with your feelings. How do you feel? Do you feel safe and happy and this is great, or do you feel like you're too much of a risk or you're uncomfortable? And then turn it into action. Like
Right.
leave if it doesn't feel right, or dig in if it does. But you have to have that moment. You have to have a dialogue with your ego, your parts, and your gut feeling. And I've always nurtured that dialogue. And man, people talk about it like the universe is, taking care of. I feel like I'm connected to the universe or whatever. You're like asking the universe for this and that, but really you're doing it through intentionality that arises out of a dialogue with how you feel, you know. And so that's the big thing I tell my kids: just keep that dialogue going. It's not like you figure it out and you're done. It's a daily, hourly, kind of interaction.
Yes, indeed.
Yes, indeed.
Yes, indeed. I think
And
this is an amazing place to stop. I think we
yeah,
talked about monkey farts. We've talked and then we like landed all the way to spiritual checking in,
yeah, I
and
agree.
I love it. And I feel like I feel like I covered, you know, pretty much what I was hoping to get from you. I It's just been
Good.
really great. I'm really happy to see your stupid face. I love you.
I know you too, buddy. I really think what you're doing is great. The whole couch riffs universe that you've created is fantastic. It's so like it's so like resourceful. You know what I mean? Like you're making things out of thin air, and that's just fantastic. Because like you said, like you don't write songs really. You bring what you do to other people's stuff, but it's cool that you found a way to have something that's your own, and it's still collaborative.
It's
And
fun.
yeah, it's fun,
I'm gonna.
right?
I
That
did.
you just get
I
the sense that it's fun,
Yeah.
just fun to do.
That's all the reason you need,
Really, totally, absolutely, yeah,
because
couldn't agree more.
life goes by pretty quick.
Yeah, man, I know. How old are you?
51 in December.
51. I'm 57. I'm knocking on 60.
Yeah, but you're fit. You've taken pretty good care of yourself. I'm gonna kill this.
Okay.